What do Brazil, Turkey, and Egypt have in common? Three separate times in three different continents, democratically elected leaders were removed from power. Not through elections or referendums, not by military coups, but in ways that no one really noticed at first. They were soft coups, regime changes without tanks, without blood, and often without the people's vote. In fact, these were orchestrated regime changes. The same actors were involved in all three, with some key differences. And while there's no grand conspiracy here, there are worrying parallels. A soft coup can be defined as the removal of an elected leader through non-violent means. But it's not just about bringing down the government, it's also about controlling the transition afterwards, ensuring that power doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Basically, it's regime change with minimal violence and maximum control. The main tool of the trade here is pressure. Think of it as the inverse of a death squad. Instead of killing your opponents, you pressure them out of office. This pressure can come in many forms: economic sanctions, legal prosecution, mass protests, and in some cases, all three. Sometimes it's obvious what's happening. In other cases, things get messy. Let's start with the textbook example, the 2021 Brazilian coup. Then President Jair Bolsonaro was notoriously anti-establishment. He was a political outsider who'd made millions in real estate and had spent his career stirring up controversy. As a lawmaker, he was known for making wild hand movements during debates and insulting everyone around him. As a president, he alienated allies, damaged the economy, and most importantly, he enraged the elites. After Bolsonaro tried to fire the country's top judge, the Supreme Court stepped in and accused the president of overstepping his authority. With the backing of the court, hundreds of thousands flooded the streets in protest. Faced with the prospect of impeachment, Bolsonaro left office and flew to Florida, where he lives today, under a cloud of disgrace. Bolsonaro isn't the only recent example. In 2016, then Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan survived an attempted coup. Now he's widely believed to have orchestrated a soft coup of his own. The immediate trigger was a corruption scandal involving the bank Halkbank. US authorities wanted Erdogan prosecuted, but in return, they offered immunity for the bank's CEO. That deal never happened because Erdogan refused to back down, so the Americans slapped sanctions on him and his family. Then the Turkish lira collapsed, unemployment skyrocketed, inflation hit 80%, and the Turkish stock market plummeted. Facing a collapsing economy and widespread discontent, Erdogan declared a state of emergency, cracked down on the opposition, and eventually even shut down social media. He remains president to this day. And finally, we have Egypt. After the Arab Spring, Mohamed Morsi became Egypt's first democratically elected president, but his tenure was marked by mass protests against his rule. So in 2013, the Egyptian military intervened, ousted Morsi, and installed a new president. Some saw this as a full-blown coup, but others called it a soft coup because the military didn't seize power directly. Instead, they funded and supported the protesters on the ground. Today, Egypt is ruled by General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who's widely seen as the mastermind behind the soft coup. He's maintained a massive crackdown on dissent and won 2 elections with 90% plus approval ratings. It's important to note that not every regime change qualifies as a soft coup. For instance, when Ukraine's Viktor Yanukovych was ousted in 2014, that was a revolution, not a coup. The same goes for the 2003 Rose Revolution in Georgia. Those were genuine popular revolts. Soft coups, on the other hand, tend to be more subtle. They usually involve a lot of maneuvering behind the scenes, whether it's bribing lawmakers, leaking damaging information, or funding protests. Take Brazil again. It's hard to say exactly who orchestrated Bolsonaro's downfall, but one likely candidate is the country's political class, which felt threatened by his agenda. Similarly, in Turkey, the immediate trigger for Erdogan's collapse was his decision to reject the US sanctions deal. but it was his growing authoritarianism that made people turn against him. Finally, in Egypt, it was the military that orchestrated Morsi's downfall, but their motivation wasn't ideological, it was self-preservation. The military establishment feared losing power to the elected government, so they turned to the public and exploited mass discontent. Ultimately, it was the people who brought down these regimes. But that wasn't necessarily a good thing. After all, the people are easily manipulated, and that's where outside forces come in. These outside forces could be foreign governments, international organizations, or even private individuals. They don't need much, just a little bit of money and a lot of connections. We already mentioned the role of US authorities in Turkey. In Egypt, it was the Saudis and Emiratis who pressured the generals into action. And in Brazil, well, that's still a matter of debate. But foreign actors only play a supporting role. The stars of the show are domestic actors like the media, the judiciary, and civil society. Consider the role of the media. Newspapers, TV channels, and websites are incredibly powerful. They shape our understanding of the world. They set the agenda for politicians, and they can make or break reputations. During Bolsonaro's presidency, major Brazilian outlets consistently pushed anti-government narratives, and when he lost, they celebrated wildly. Or consider the judiciary. Courts have the power to prosecute and jail anyone, regardless of their status. In Brazil, it was the Supreme Court that accused Bolsonaro of overstepping his authority. In Turkey, it was the courts that took away Erdogan's passport. And in Egypt, it was the courts that stripped Morsi of his presidential powers. Civil society also plays an important role. We're talking about NGOs, think tanks, and activist groups. They're usually pretty small and operate behind the scenes, but they can be very effective. Take the Eurasia Group, an American risk analysis firm. They reportedly helped organize the protests that ousted Morsi. And of course, you can't forget the people. When ordinary citizens take to the streets, even the mightiest of leaders start to shake. Large-scale protests are rare, but when they happen, they're almost impossible to ignore. Take the 2014 umbrella movement in Hong Kong. Hundreds of thousands of people protested against Chinese interference in politics. And while the movement failed to achieve its goals, it did force the government to listen. Now, I want to stress that none of this is illegal. Regime change through non-violent means is perfectly legal, and frankly, it's something we should all support. Authoritarian leaders shouldn't feel safe in office. They should know that their people will rise up and hold them to account, but that's not always what happens. Sometimes it feels like the elites are using the tools of democracy to undermine democracy itself. Think of it like playing poker. You're not allowed to look at your cards until it's your turn. But if you're a skilled player, you can get a sense of what everyone else has by watching their reactions. That's basically what's happening here. The elites are developing new tactics to stack the deck in their favor, and the rest of us are only just realizing it. So who exactly benefits from soft coups? Well, as we said before, the key to a successful soft coup is getting the right people on your side. That usually means the media, the judiciary, and influential figures in society. If you can get those people on your side, then you have the tools to bring down any government. And once you have those tools, the possibilities are endless. For instance, take a look at the United States. Recently, a group of Republican lawmakers tried to overturn the results of the 2020 election. They pressured Vice President Mike Pence to declare the election invalid, even though he didn't have the power to do so. They sent a letter to states asking them to disregard the popular vote. And they even organized fake elector slates to cast doubt on the election results. Thankfully, none of this worked. But it does raise an important question. Why do so many Americans seem willing to accept a soft coup? Is it because they've become accustomed to it? Is it because they don't understand how it works? Or is it because they secretly support it? Look, I'm not trying to answer those questions. I'm just throwing them out there for you to think about. The reality is that we don't know what the future holds. There are too many variables. All we can do is learn from the past and be prepared for the future. When it comes to soft coups, the best defense is awareness. If we know how they work, then we can spot them early and stop them before they start. Thanks for watching.